After that discussion, it is time for another one. And we love our discussions. We get deep so quickly on the Feel Good Breakfast Show. So we know in South Africa, the idea of a family unit is different to that of the Western world, if you think about it, which often has two parents in the household as opposed to the average South African predominantly being taken care of by grandparents or even a single parent. This at the base, excluding blended families and growing range in what the family looks like, we want to kind of step onto something that's so important, and the family dynamics, especially in a changing world.
Completely. So this morning we thought we'd look through that lens at some of the different ways to define a family in 2023 with registered counsellor and friend of the show, Sadia Southgate. Sadia, this is an interesting space to work on, and I'm going to say it's a safe space for now. Everyone approaches this with a certain amount of bias, and I think Carl and I are often counselling each other to just transcend and take a step back because everyone is triggered. And when it comes to the most personal space, our family space, this dynamic has changed so radically. In your space, how do you now define a family? What is that tie that binds, that can take that label as being a family?
Yeah, definitely. I think that for me, how I would define family is to consist of a father, a mother, and a child living or rather residing together. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a good definition, definitely. But of course, there are different families out there. In fact, I chatted to somebody who lived in a commune, and that was their family unit because all the other family members were in other countries. So how do we redefine what that family is in terms of definition? I mean, there's so many others.
Definitely. And I think a lot of the time we're trying to find and fit in what the right definition is.
To code it.
So and kind of put the label on it. But the most important thing is that for every family, there's a different meaning to it. So it's important to rather navigate through what family is for that individual and for that particular family and for another. And different doesn't mean wrong.
But exactly.
Lovely.
Because the role is where the kind of tire touches the tar, so to speak, and that's where it all plays out. So it's who's playing that role of the father, the archetypal, whatever you need from that. What kind of role is the mother figure playing in that space, and what role is the child playing in that space? And if you can be clear about communicating that within your little family dynamic, that's where it starts to click. So how do you focus on those roles within this very different looking family setup? How do we as a family approach a positive kind of click?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that there are often different roles that is instigated within the family, but it's what we look at, like the permissive role as well as you know, perhaps the mom will even be the one that avoids the conflict because they want to keep the peace.
For sure.
And then you get the authoritative role as well. It's the ones that set the rules and the ones that comes up more with solutions with the child as well. And then what we call authoritarian. So this is the parent that is a lot more strict. But in overall, we look at what we call Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So as parents, whether it's the father, the mother, or whoever it may be in that sense, because we know that sometimes grandparents is single-parent households as well. So there's all of those dynamics that we look at, but ultimately we look at the basic needs of the child, whether that be shelter, food, support, the safety, the sense of belonging that we want to create already together as a family.
I love that. That's the South African model.
Yes.
We start with the child, and then we grow from there.
And
I love that.
We have to do that because, you know, there are some households where there are a number of different adults in the house and the kid. So you said authoritarian. Like, who takes the authority in that way? Because let's just say the one person has a different upbringing and a different way of dealing with a kid. Then the other person has a completely different way. And then they struggle, but the kid is the one that's actually is not benefiting in that scenario. So how do you think one would navigate that particular scenario? I mean, I know you can't tell every South African adult to, you know, get mature and chill out and think about the kid, but in those spaces, you know, are there ways, especially sitting down with a registered counsellor such as yourself, to try and build the proper relationship structure in the household so the kid doesn't feel that struggle?
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good question. What comes to mind is also knowing that there are different personality temperaments that we're dealing with.
Yes.
So a lot of the time we try and take what we've learned from our families and try to then blend that in. And it's important that we don't just take everything from our past and bring it with us in our dynamic, but it's important that as a couple we sit down, who is the one that maybe is better with dealing, for example, the finances, the one is dealing with the kids. So it's looking at what each other's strengths are rather than focusing focusing on each other's weaknesses.
Nice.
How do we get, and I absolutely love that. I suppose being relatively newly married and looking through life from a completely different collective space now, the personal growth has been amazing. Some of it's been very difficult because there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
It's like, this is it. We've got to get ourselves right. We've got to sort this stuff out. And it's been a process of hard work. Luckily, I've got experts like this to tap into. But for that couple that are at that point now, where they are ready to cross that verge and stop acting out, stop being a slave to their own baggage from their own childhood and move forward to support the growth of that child, how does that conversation begin for the couple, for that, however they look in this modern context? How do we start that conversation?
Yeah. The first point I would suggest is to acknowledge that there is something to deal with.
Okay.
Because a lot of the times we don't acknowledge, hey, this is something that's maybe causing, yes, it's causing conflict, because the reality is children are watching. So if we're not managing that family dynamic effectively, in essence, what's going to happen, the child is going to take that and interact that out with their peers and interactions that they have. So it's important to firstly acknowledge that there is something to deal with.
I love that. And the crazy thing with kids is all of their perception is there.
Yeah.
They just don't have the context, the language to translate what they are seeing, but they see the truth, whether you're telling it to them or not. And their little minds get broken when you lie and they see a different scenario playing out. So being truthful with yourself and each other is possibly where that conversation absolutely begins. But we're going to take it a step further. We ain't going nowhere.
Oh, no.
We'd love to hear from you.
063-408-8863. Don't be shy. If you'd like to jump in with a question for Sadia or the panel, please feel free. We're here to answer whatever questions that you may have. And we'll be back with how the family unit has changed in 2023 in the next couple of minutes. Stay there.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for rejoining what is proving to be a thrilling conversation because it speaks to the future. And we as South Africans are undoubtedly a completely unique people with a unique makeup of what a family structure actually looks like. And registered counsellor Sadia Southgate has very thankfully been helping us try to establish what that is, but more importantly, how we activate that, how we clearly define those roles and make the most of it for our little ones.
We have to. And let's get some voice notes in. We did ask for them and you delivered. Thank you. Nikita, you're up first.
Good morning, Expresso family. Speaking to Nikita. My family tradition has changed a lot. From the woman doing everything to the man being the king of the home. My husband actually helps a lot. He does things that a woman's supposed to do. So I feel that it has changed, and with time evolving and our generation, we feel like everyone should be a part of taking care of the home, not only the woman.
100%. Okay, we're going to jump on that because that almost speaks to a cultural shift, a perception of what that archetypal male-female role is. We wanted another voice note, and a doctor is weighing in. Let's hear from Dr. Jasmine.
Morning, Expresso. I just want to say thanks for an amazing show. So I'm away at a congress today. I'm a medical doctor, and my husband is at home with the kids. I have a 1-year-old son and a 6-year-old son. So hashtag super dad, and well done to all those dads who allow their wives to follow their dreams.
I love it, man.
Do you feel like there's a narrative here? And I think let's just touch on that. You know, there were 2 voice notes that spoke to it. Society, we have to go into this. Gender roles. We live in South Africa that has a lot of cultural dynamics, all right, as well as social dynamics. And the cultural dynamics and the social dynamics, they often overlap because there are cultures where traditionally the man must lead and the woman must be at home. That is changing significantly in 2023. So with those 2 voice notes, how do we actually get into this change and make sure that the change is a smooth one? Because there are still people who are very resistant to that idea.
There's generations of...
That's correct. So there's an older generation that is not, dare I say the word, woke. And you get a younger generation who's saying, I don't care, you know, I can be a guy and I'm going to do the cooking, cleaning and stay at home. So attacking this in 2023 in South Africa, where do we start with regard to making sure that this gender shift and this gender awareness, I should say, is properly taken care of in the home?
Yeah, I think it, for me, excuse me, for me it would be important to discuss not just the family dynamics as a whole, but as how do each individual, how are they bringing their part within the home, because we don't want to have the wife steering 100%, you know, of the workload financially, seeing to the kids when the wife gets home, but it's understanding that it's okay for the wife. Again, it comes down to if that is her strength, if she wants to, you know, pursue her dreams and her goals as the husband, we support that. So, I mean, I have first-hand experience of that when my husband is supporting my dream, but the most important thing is when it comes down to burnout as well, because sometimes if the load rests too much on one partner, there's a lack of balance. So it's also important for the wife then to voice, hey, I'm okay with you not doing this, and then I'm okay with you doing this, but could you then help me with this? Could you do this? So that open communication and clear communication, discussing your expectations as well is very important.
Yeah. Just talk. Just talk. If you are in a relationship, it's a two-way flow of communication. That's the joy of being in a relationship, is you've got someone in your corner. Yeah. But you have a baseline of absolute authenticity, otherwise it's going to bubble under all of the baggage you're going to carry over from past generations. But you have an opportunity as a couple, whatever that couple looks like, as a family unit to redefine, to change the game. But it does require absolute authenticity, because your kids will see through it in a second. So this is where you get the chance to talk about what you want to achieve, what you want your family to look like, and go about achieving that together. You're amazing. Thank you so, so much. She'll be back next Tuesday, I have a feeling.
Of course, definitely.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. We missed you. It's a Feel Good Breakfast Show. It is Expresso here on S3, and we're continuing our conversation with registered counsellor Sadia Southgate around the evolution of the family unit in South Africa and what it looks like, particularly for South Africans. We have to be contextual with our conversation. South African family units are very different. We mentioned you know, the social, cultural. We have a very unique country in that particular way. But let's talk about the pivots of how, you know, the country has sort of looked at a family, you know. We have a lot of single-parent homes, we mentioned, a lot of uncles and aunties looking after kids, a lot of grandparents. So if we look at that specifically, let's talk about those roles in a lot of ways, and making sure that, I think a lot of people want to replace family roles. But sometimes if you're a grandparent, you're looking after this kid, and they're like, oh, no, I'm the parent of this child, but now I have to be a mother and a father. Like, do they have to? You know, or is it just about guiding a mind to the future?
Yeah.
Definitely. I think you touched on just at the end is guiding the mind into the future.
Yes.
Because we understand that regardless of whether the grandparent wants to take on the role, the dynamic of being the sole parent, ultimately the child knows that this is my grandmother.
Yes.
So it's important to actually have these conversations around the table, open and non-judgmental conversations with the kids, because a lot of the times we dismiss the kids and we make the decisions and place labels already on ourselves and the kids, and that in turn just kind of jeopardizes the whole journey of just building the connection.
Well, it's inauthentic, and I think that, you know, maybe it's the South African way, but if you think in a single-parent household, it's not wrong.
Yeah.
Because you've got continuity, which is the biggest thing for a child, that continuity of that connection and link. And then within that, it takes a village. I think like my guy friends shaped my personality as much as any other male figure. So those roles will be very transient and they will shift and change. I know, my poor wife, that my guy friends had a hand in bringing him up. But I think there is something about that, removing the judgment is such, because that's the past. Fear is the future. Now is practical. So let's see if you guys can weigh in with a practical application and your insights right now. So let's hear a couple of those voice notes.
Morning, Expresso team. My role changed in 2021 when my husband passed on, and now I have more responsibilities and I live alone, so it's been a challenge, but I'm getting there. Doing what needs to be done.
Wow. I'm so glad she said that last sentence, because that's the reality. It's not a choice.
No.
99% of the time in a South African context, it's dealing with the reality.
Wow. I think thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing that. I mean, that's exactly what we look for on your Feel Good Breakfast show. So we are here for you as well. We do have another voice note, I do believe, as well, to weigh in. Gertrude.
Good morning, Expresso team. This is Gertrude here. Gertrude Bentham.
Hi.
I think this is my first time that I'm on a WhatsApp voice note.
Welcome.
Well done.
And I hope that my message will come through. I like your topic. I just want to say that I raised my boys to be hands-on in the house because one day when they are grown up, they need to be hands-on, helping their wives in their own homes also. So I groomed them to be this responsible young men, not only working for their family, but working within the household also, helping the woman. And also they must raise their children like I raised them, being responsible and hands-on. Thank you very much.
Well, Gertrude, thank you. That first voice note as well, which is very, very impressive.
Yeah,
thank you for that.
Dropped a bomb with your first one. Well done. Absolutely loved it. When we look at the major disruptors, the negative influences, so that we can be aware, see the red flags and navigate them, what are the big monsters in this conversation? And we know that there's a lot of trauma in every family just about in South Africa, which is obviously going to have to put its hand up. But what is the disruptor in this flow?
There's three things that come to mind, and for adults as well, it's specifically work, because parents come home, they're overwhelmed, they're overworked, they're burnt out, and then it is trauma as well, so kind of like taking the past and then bringing it into the
Your
now.
baggage.
Yes, kind of just leaving it there. But the other thing is screen time, for both adults and kids.
Oh.
Screen time, which is a very different topic.
I mean, it's true.
Or is it? I mean, wow. It stands to reason, because that's been an issue in other areas. Any last advice, a mantra that you, in your own relationship, lean on? Something that you want to share?
Yes, definitely. I do want to say, again, it comes down to the kids.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing and acknowledging that children have a voice. So when we look at the kids as well, we know and understand that they go outside. If they don't get something within the family dynamic or within the home, they go outside to seek that validation. Yes. So it's important to also look to help the child find that validation within the home, because as you mentioned earlier on, you know, we know the saying that it takes a village, you know, to raise a child. So with that, we do want to make sure that all of those dynamics and those roles are kind of just cohesive and interlinked with each other. So that's important, making sure that there are open discussions with the kids, because the children also has a voice.
Sadia Southgate, registered counsellor, back on Expresso soon. Guarantee that. Thank you so much for being so open and for joining us in this conversation through family dynamics in your Feel Good Breakfast show. Let's chat to another family member, Raul, now.